Hi, this is Vicky here from BookTook, where I introduce you to the finest books and transformational ideas from world-class thinkers, experts, and achievers. In one short video, you get to learn what others may have taken months, years, or even a lifetime. Combine the populations of Germany, UK, France, and Italy. You will get the total number of people who are suffering from depression in the world today. 264 million. This number is alarming. Depression has been called the world's #1 public health problem. In fact, depression is so widespread, it is considered the common cold of psychiatric disturbances. But there's a grim difference between the depression and the cold. Depression can kill you. Before looking into why millions of people are suffering from depression, let me tell you something equally alarming about the widely used antidepressant drugs used to cure this life disease. So here is what happens. If you start to have persistently depressed mood or loss of interest in activities, causing significant impact in daily life, sooner than later people around you realize something is wrong. You visit a doctor, although surprisingly even this step is still a taboo in countries like India. Doctors are trained to administer you some antidepressant drugs. Why are these given? Because depression traditionally is thought as some brain glitch caused by deficiency of chemical named serotonin, and these drugs supposedly restore the balance of this chemical in your brain. But surprisingly, the biggest study of serotonin's effects in humans found no relationship with depression. Professor Andrew Scull of Princeton has said attributing depression to low serotonin is deeply misleading and unscientific. Is that the reason for continuing increase in death rates in depressed people, in spite of billions of antidepressant drugs prescribed for decades now? But some people must surely be recovering after taking these antidepressant drugs, right? How do they recover? Truth is, when you give a patient a medical treatment, he or she is given two things. You're giving him a drug which will usually have a chemical effect on his body in some way, and you're also giving him a story about how the treatment will affect him. As amazing as this seems, the story that is told to a patient is often more important than the drug. How do we know this? Because in hundreds and hundreds of trials, when a patient is offered a plain sugar pill called a placebo, along with a story assuring that this is a powerful drug and will cure depression symptoms quickly, it works an extraordinary amount of time. This is known as placebo effect. Taking a placebo not only can change how we feel, it actually does have real physical impacts on our bodies. So what is the point here? You might say, what are the reasons story or placebo? People do get and feel better, right? Let them have these antidepressant drugs. Why break the spell? Two reasons. These drugs don't come cheap. And if it's only as effective as a placebo, why not give patients a plain sugar pill along with the story of how it will help them? Patients will continue to have similar benefits at a fraction of a cost. But the second and more important reason is the tragic side effects of these antidepressant drugs, which can be very severe. Weight gain, sexual dysfunction, increase in the risk of violent criminal behavior, risk of death from all causes in old people, increase in the risk of stroke, type 2 diabetes. In pregnant women, it increases the risk of miscarriage and of having children born with autism or physical deformities. So many horrible side effects and people are still taking them. You might be wondering, how is it possible that one of the most popular drugs in the world, taken by so many people all around us, have as little impact as a placebo, but with so damaging side effects is even approved as a treatment? Obviously, there must be protections against this happening. Huge hurdles of scientific testing that have to take place before a drug gets to our hands. What's the catch? Truth is, vast majority of research into whether drugs work or not is funded by big pharmaceutical companies themselves. Expecting them to tell you limited effectiveness of the drug is like expecting KFC to tell you that fried chicken isn't good for you. When a society is trying to figure out which drug is safe to put in the market, there are meant to be two teams. The drug company making the case for it and the referee working for us, the public, figuring out if it properly works. But in this match, the referee is paid by the drug company team, and that team almost always wins. Pharma is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it doesn't suit them to suggest that natural antidepressants as there is no money in it for them. But you can choose wisely as it's your life that is at stake. I want to stress, some reputed scientists still believe that these drugs genuinely work for a minority of people. If you are in this minority and these drugs have helped, good for you. But unfortunately, they don't work for majority of the people. For the vast majority, we clearly need to find a different story about what is making us feel this way and a different set of solutions. Now, coming to the crisis at hand, why are so many people depressed? Research points to two reasons. One, having a long-term source of stress and insecurity in your life. And two, having a severe negative event. But the most startling results happen when these factors are added together. Like if you don't have a supportive partner and lose your job or are diagnosed with a terminal illness, your chances of becoming depressed don't just combine, they explode. What are the main causes that lead to depression as per science? So far, science has discovered 9. But you don't need all of them to happen to cause depression. Even a few may be bad enough. I'll discuss 4 major ones. Reason number 1 for depression: disconnection from meaningful work. Since most people spend the majority of their time on work, this is a widespread cause. It happens when you don't feel you are making any difference with your work and are just going through motions of going to the job, coming back to recover and repeating the cycle. The only motivation is collecting the paycheck. Between 2011 and 2012, the polling company Gallup conducted the most detailed study ever carried out of how people across the world feel about their work. They studied millions of workers across 142 countries. They found that only 13% of people say they are engaged, which means they are enthusiastic about and committed to their work and organization in a positive manner. Against them, 63% say they are not engaged, which is defined as sleepwalking through their workday, putting time but not energy or passion into their work. And a further 24% are actively disengaged. These people aren't just unhappy at work, they are busy acting out their unhappiness. Reason number 2 for depression: disconnection from other people. Till a generation or two ago, people were part of communities where everybody knew everybody. And we have been part of groups since our Homo sapien days. Being part of groups made us survive predators faster and stronger than us. So over millions of years, this instinct of togetherness stayed. But for the first time in human history, while we have unimaginable progress on multiple fronts, we are more apart than ever. We hardly know our neighbors. We barely give any time to our families, and most of our connections are superficial and not deep. While we may have hundreds of virtual friends, but every research has proven that excessive time on social media is a recipe for constant anxiety and doesn't replace the genuine connect of few good friends. As per research, being deeply lonely seems to cause as much stress as being punched by a stranger. Picture the range of loneliness in our culture as a straight line. At one end, you are 0% lonely, and the other end, you are 100% lonely. If you move from being in the middle, 50%, to being at 65%, your chances of developing depression symptoms increase by 8 times. Please understand that loneliness isn't the physical absence of other people. If you have lots of people around you, perhaps even a husband or wife, or a family or a busy workplace, but you don't share anything that matters with them, you will still be lonely. Reason number 3 for depression: disconnection from meaningful values. If I ask you, where do you get happiness from? You might say money and having all the physical comforts. But a modern day man has more comforts than any king in the history could have ever dreamed of. You get so many things at just the touch of a button, but still people are more depressed than ever with their materialistic ambitions. This is not just a philosophical thought, but backed by research. Materialistic people who think happiness comes from accumulating stuff and a superior status have much higher levels of depression and anxiety. Why would this be? What could be happening here? Ever since the 1960s, psychologists have known that there are two different ways you can motivate yourself to get out of bed in the morning. The first is called intrinsic motives. They are the things you do purely because you value them in and of themselves, not because of anything you get out of them. It's like when a kid plays, she's acting totally on intrinsic motives. She's doing it because it gives her joy. At the same time, there's a rival set of values which are called extrinsic motives. They are the things you do not because you actually want to do them, but because you'll get something in return, whether it's money, admiration, sex, superior status. As per research, people who achieve their extrinsic goals didn't experience any increase in day-to-day happiness. None. They spend a huge amount of energy chasing those goals, but when they fulfill them, they feel the same as they had at the start. Your promotion, your fancy car, your new iPhone, the expensive necklace, they won't improve your happiness even 1 inch. But people who achieved their intrinsic goals did become significantly happier and less depressed and anxious. 22 different studies have found that more materialistic and extrinsically motivated you become, the more depressed you will be. Reason number 4 for depression: disconnection from natural world. If you're looking at Niagara Falls or Burj Khalifa in Dubai, both induce a sense of awe in us because of the enormity of the view. But as per research, our bodies and mind are attuned to look at natural wonders and feel good about them. Modern world wonders a relatively new development versus the natural environment humans have lived for millions of years. So on an evolutionary scale, we are more close to our natural habitat. As per multiple studies, it is found that the people who moved to green areas saw a big reduction in depression, and the people who moved away from green areas saw a big increase in depression. That was my take on this book, Lost Connections. If you or someone you know is undergoing through depression, please know that you are not a machine with broken parts. You're a human whose needs are not being met. You need to have a community. You need to have meaningful values, not the junk values you have been pumped full of all your life, telling your happiness comes through money and buying objects. You need to have meaningful work. You need the natural world. You need connections to all these things. Hope you found this useful. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on these suggestions to win our depression. If you like this book summary, do share with someone who might like it as well. Let me know if you want book summary and tactics from any particular book. If you didn't like this video, please share any specific feedback for me to improve. Let's continue this quest to learn from the best, stay safe, have fun, and be limitless.